You've survived every single hard day of your life so far, every failure, every loss, every moment you thought you wouldn't make it through. 100% success rate. And yet, the next difficult moment still terrifies you. Why? Here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Most people aren't destroyed by their circumstances. They're destroyed by their interpretation of them. The job loss that broke someone wasn't the job loss itself. It was the story they told themselves about what it meant. The relationship that shattered someone wasn't the breakup. It was the belief that they were somehow unworthy of something better. We live inside our own minds far more than we live in reality. And the ancient Stoics, philosophers who faced exile, slavery, war, and loss, understood this with terrifying clarity, 2,000 years before modern psychology confirmed it. What they left behind isn't just philosophy, it's a survival manual for the human mind. Today, we're going through 10 principles that don't just sound wise, they work. And by the time we're done, the way you respond to life will never quite be the same. Principle 1. The compass within a ship in harbor is safe. But that's not what ships are for. Most people drift, not because they're lazy, but because they've never sat still long enough to ask the one question that changes everything. What am I actually for? Not your job title, not your relationship status, not what your parents hoped you'd become. What do you stand for? The Stoics called this your telos, your purpose, your inner direction. Without it, every external storm feels catastrophic because there's nothing anchoring you from the inside. But when you know what you're building, even in rough outline, the chaos around you stops being a threat. It becomes material. Every setback becomes information. Every obstacle becomes a test of whether your purpose is real or just a fantasy you hold when life is comfortable. Your purpose isn't found, it's forged in the quiet moments when you're honest enough to face what you truly value. Take that seriously, write it down. Let it be imperfect, but have one, because without that inner compass, what comes next won't just be difficult, it'll be impossible. Your mind is the most valuable real estate on earth. And most people leave the door wide open. Every notification, every toxic headline, every conversation with someone who drains your energy, every moment of comparison to a stranger's highlight reel, all of it walks right in, uninvited, and rearranges the furniture. Epictetus was a slave. He owned nothing, and yet he wrote about a freedom that most wealthy, comfortable people never find. Why? Because he understood that no one could enter his mind without his permission. That's the game. That's always been the game. Guarding your mind doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or cutting yourself off from the world. It means curating what you allow to influence you. The books you read, the people you engage with, the thoughts you water, versus the ones you starve. A mind well guarded doesn't react to every ripple. It responds deliberately, with clarity, from a place of strength, rather than fear. Start small. Notice, just once today, a thought that doesn't belong to you, a fear that was handed to you by someone else, a standard you never chose. And ask, do I actually believe this? That pause is where freedom begins. Between what happens to you and what you do next, there is a space. Most people never find it. In traffic, in arguments, in disappointment, the impulsive response feels like the only one, but it never is. Think about the last time you said something you regretted, the last time you made a decision from anger. How did it serve you? Impulse is fast. Wisdom is intentional. The practice is this: when something triggers you, a harsh word, a rejection, a failure, resist the urge to immediately fill the silence with reaction. Breathe, even for 3 seconds. Ask, what response right now would the person I'm trying to become actually choose? This isn't weakness. This is the highest form of self-mastery, choosing your actions rather than being dragged by them. Do it enough times and you stop being a passenger in your own life. But there's something even more powerful than controlling your reactions, and most people completely overlook it. People are going to misunderstand you, criticize you, sometimes unfairly. And here's what the Stoics knew that most people still haven't accepted. That's not the problem. The problem is handing them the power to destabilize you. When you're deeply rooted in your own values, criticism loses its sting, not because you stop hearing it, but because you have a far more reliable source of self-assessment than someone else's opinion. Here's the practice. The next time someone criticizes you, before defending or dismissing, hold it. Ask honestly, is there any truth here worth keeping? If yes, take it. If not, release it. Not every arrow deserves to land. Principle 5. The alchemy of hardship. The Stoics had a phrase, amor fati, love of fate, not tolerance of fate, not acceptance of fate, love of it. That sounds insane when you're in the middle of something painful, but here's what they meant. Every difficult thing that has ever happened to you carried something inside it, a lesson, a redirection, a hardening of character you could not have gotten any other way. The fire that forges steel would destroy plastic. The difference isn't the fire, it's what you're made of. When something difficult arrives in your life, the first instinct is to ask, why is this happening to me? The Stoic asks, what is this happening for? That single shift in question changes everything. It transforms you from a victim of circumstances into someone extracting value from every experience, especially the painful ones. You don't have to love the pain in the moment, but you can begin to trust that on the other side of it, something is being built that couldn't have been built any other way. And when you truly understand the next principle, facing your deepest fears stops being something you dread. It becomes something you seek. Principle 6. The face of fear. Fear is loudest in the dark. When we avoid something, a difficult conversation, a career risk, a confrontation with our own limitations, the fear grows. Every day we avoid it, we're unconsciously telling ourselves, this thing is stronger than me. The Stoics practiced something called premeditatio malorum, the deliberate visualization of what could go wrong. Before an important event, they would sit quietly and imagine the worst realistic outcome, not to spiral into anxiety, but to realize, I could survive that. And even if it happened, I would find a way. Principle 7. The discipline of acceptance. There's a version of acceptance that's passive, defeated, the shrug of someone who stopped caring. That is not what the Stoics meant. Stoic acceptance is more like a surgeon's mindset. The surgeon doesn't panic about the patient on the table. They accept the reality of what's in front of them, clearly, without distortion. So, they can act with full effectiveness. What you resist, you can't change. What you see clearly, you can work with. When something goes wrong, a loss, a betrayal, a disruption to your plans, the first instinct, is denial or rage. Both are expensive. Both consume energy you need for the actual problem. The most powerful thing you can do in any crisis is become the calmest person in the room, not because you don't feel it, but because you've accepted it fully enough to act. There's one principle left that ties everything together, the one the Stoics considered the highest form of living, and most people never even get close to it. Principle 8, living as if it mattered. The Stoics believed you could tell everything about a person by watching not what they said, but how they lived on an ordinary Tuesday. Not in the moments of inspiration, not when people were watching, but in the quiet, unremarkable moments when no one would ever know the difference. That is where character is built, or isn't. Living according to your values, what the Stoics called living according to nature, means closing the gap between who you say you are and how you actually spend your minutes. It means that if you say patience is important, you practice patience in traffic, with a slow cashier, with a frustrating colleague. Virtue isn't a feeling. It's not a belief. It's a practice. Repeated, imperfect, and daily. The question worth asking every night isn't, was today successful? It's, was today consistent with who I'm trying to become? We live in a culture that profits from your dissatisfaction. If you feel like enough, buy less. If you feel worthy, you won't chase validation. The entire architecture of modern distraction is built on making you feel insufficient. The Stoics saw this trap 2 millennia ago. Marcus Aurelius had access to everything Rome could offer: wealth, power, luxury, without limit. And he wrote, privately, in a journal he never intended for publication, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." This isn't an argument for poverty. It's an argument for inner wealth. When your sense of sufficiency comes from within, from your values, your discipline, your clarity of purpose, external things stop having the power to either complete you or destroy you. They become nice to have rather than necessary to survive. Every single day, you will fall short of the person you want to be. You'll react when you meant to respond. You'll avoid when you meant to face. You'll drift when you meant to stay anchored. This is not failure. This is the condition. The Stoics practiced daily reflection, not as punishment, but as return. Each evening, Marcus Aurelius would review his day, not to judge himself harshly, but to understand clearly where he could do better tomorrow. The practice of returning to your values, to your purpose, to your principles, is the practice of the philosophy itself. You're not trying to become perfect. You're trying to become consistent. Consistent enough that over months and years, the gap between who you are and who you want to be quietly closes. You may never face what Socrates faced, but you will face loss, rejection, failure, uncertainty. And when you do, the question is simply, how well have you prepared your mind? The world will not slow down for you. The chaos will not wait until you're ready. But here is what's true and has always been true. You don't need the world to change. You need to become someone the world can't shake. That work begins today. It begins with one honest thought, one deliberate pause, one small act of choosing your response over your reaction. Do that enough times, and you become someone different entirely. If something in this video landed for you, if even one idea shifts the way you see your day, consider subscribing. This channel is for people who are serious about that work. We'll be here when you're ready to go deeper.